I'm speaking of the immensely destructive fires that took place.
Hi, everybody. I'm your California girl. Happy to be here.
Obviously spent plenty of time.
Other cities near Los Angeles.
When I have had conversations with people,
Couple that with what you said, right? Being active.
It seems like it's just an ongoing crisis.
trying to figure out what the plan is now.
There is good information out there. All you have to do is.
There was a lot of talk in the media, and I'm from Las Vegas. I'm a realtor in Las Vegas.
Of course, there's property taxes and, the construction costs and all that have basically been about the same.
This certain technology exists to prevent fires.
You have to have insurance at home time.
There are things that have to be put in place now that
Insurance is a critical component.
when it comes to insurance, homeowners insurance, fire insurance.
Fun. Hello, friends, and welcome to California Exit. I'm David Barry, the Leaving California guy, and I'm here with my co-host, Jen Day. How are you, Jen?
I'm good. Hi, everybody. I'm your California girl. Happy to be here.
We've created this platform to talk honestly about what's happening in California. Not just the headlines, but the real life consequences people are dealing with every single day. Today's episode is a little bit different. It's about something that was and still is deeply emotional for many people who lived in California in January of 2025. That was just about a year ago. And for those of you still living there, you may still be dealing with the aftermath. Of course, I'm speaking of the immensely destructive fires that took place in the Pacific Palisades, Altadena, and other cities near Los Angeles.
So now we're a year past. It's been a year of dealing with the aftermath for Californians here, and I think it's important to understand what's been happening, what has been provided, what are the challenges that people are going through, and how has it actually been for people trying to recover from losing their homes.
Jen, it's not that fires are, they're no longer emergencies. It seems like it's just an ongoing crisis. I mean, do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's really been, I think, such trauma for many people that it's even still hard to talk about. But when I have had conversations with people, I've had, unfortunately, many friends and family that personally lost their homes, and then clients that I've been working with, trying to figure out what the plan is now. And do they rebuild? Do they try to rent somewhere for a while until they figure out the next move? What does the next steps look for them? And then some people, of course, have decided to just say goodbye to California at this point.
Well, it's funny, when the cameras leave, the people don't. And it just seems like the media is always on to the next shiny object. And that's really the sad part. And that's what we want to try to talk about a little bit today, that, just because the cameras are gone, there's still a lot of problems that are happening. It's not about politics. It's not about blame. It's about families. It's about homeowners, developers, and communities who are still stuck months later, trying to figure out, my gosh, Jen, what comes next?
And I can tell you from my personal experience, I witnessed the fires from my window. I was fortunately, further south in Santa Monica, so I wasn't so close to where I had to evacuate. But I'm in a high rise, and I could see the entire Santa Monica mountains going up in flames, and it was just so upsetting. And I barely watched TV. I just looked out my window, and I could just feel for all the people experiencing this, and trying to understand what is going to be the recovery. What are people going to do after this, and how can I help? How can I do something to help the people, the real estate that has been affected by all of this. And it's definitely been an intense experience over the past year.
Jen, it sounds to me like you don't watch much TV, but it sounded like you were in a bad movie. You probably were like, and I don't mean to laugh because it's not funny. And what people have gone through, and I've watched some stories, I've seen some shows. It is absolutely devastating, and it seems like it's overwhelming.
It really has been so challenging, and I really want to give us an uplifting message for today because there has been a lot of things going on in the recovery and to try to help people. And we are very fortunate today. We have a guest that has had firsthand experience in the field, talking with people that have lost their homes, trying to rebuild, trying to figure out what the next moves are. And he works directly in real estate development. He has clients and projects that have been directly affected by these fires. And he was actually just at the Palisades site last week, so he can speak very specifically to this. So without further ado, I would like to introduce real estate developer with Westside Property Group and our broker at Harcourt's Westside, Ty Cueva. Hi, Ty.
Hello, hi. Thank you, Jen. Thank you for having me. I don't I don't know how uplifting I'll be because this is obviously a tough situation for all, especially those in Palisades. I like to say I was born in Santa Monica, but I was bred on the West Side, right? And even though I spent the majority of my time growing up in Santa Monica, Venice, and Mar Vista Marina, by attending Santa Monica High School, Samo High, I obviously spent plenty of time in both Pali and Malibu. So I have a perspective, and it's not just a what I would call a 50-year perspective because we've been in Santa Monica since the 1800s. Both sides of my family, both the Cueva side and the Scott side, have both been in Santa Monica for over 100 years. So trying to be a good listener as a kid, which is not easy, but listening to parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, a lot of thoughts, a lot of opinions, very opinionated family, like most families, right? So taking a look at that and then couple that with what you said, right? Being active in both a development and being a broker here on the West Side. I do have a different perspective maybe than most that haven't been here that long. And I will just kind of say that the overriding theme that we should probably talk about today is a very important word that I don't hear enough going on right now is expectations. Because expectations are going to be the key to, both communities, but obviously, I know we're more focused here on the West Side and talking about Palisades.
Well, Ty, I got to say thank you so much I know you must be extremely busy, and just to take time to share some stories and some insight on it, I really appreciate it. And Ty, this is the first time that I'm meeting you, and I do have a disclaimer that Jen and I always give. And I am not anti-California by any means. I think California is a beautiful state. So we never tell anyone to leave on our show, but we always want people to know that if they do want to leave, that we have resources and we actually have now have the blueprint where we can actually help them. We can have save time, save money. So I haven't said that to you before, Ty, but I want to make it clear that I'm not here to tell people they should leave California by any means. And I know you both love it where you're at, but we like to be a resource for people, that need help or that think that it's time for them to go. So Ty, thank you so much for joining us. And I have to ask, I'm really curious, what did you see last week when you were on the ground right there in the fires?
Well, what you saw is obvious still, a long way to go. There is good information out there. All you have to do is look up the statistics, and you can pull up, different sites. I use obviously the MLS a lot. We pull reports from that. So the good news is that there's no doubt that people are buying. There's more. There's been more buying going on in the last few months than folks listing. So there are buyers. So that's really good news. there, both land and homes. The one thing that I would say though is that when you're there, and we have, folks there every day. When you're there, what is kind of cool is you'll see little clusters or like impromptu meetings, like a few neighbors. Like, you can tell it's not just two neighbors. You could tell it's someone from across the street, or it's two or three people, 4 or 5 people talking. And you just have to give them the respect and the space, because they're probably having, stories that they're sharing with each other, but I'm sure they're sharing their thoughts and opinions. You'll see that every single day, especially in the alphabet streets. You will see that. It's fairly common. So you see that, but you also see blocks that are really, most of the block hasn't been touched, or there've been one or two houses. And then also the other part of this, Palisades is like any other place where you have a big area, and people think of it just as Pali, but you have distinct neighborhoods or markets inside of a market, like a sub-market or whatever you want to call it. I just
Hey
call it.
Ty, hold on one second. I hate to interrupt you, but Jen, I think you have some background noise and it keeps panning back. So if you're not speaking, you can just mute your screen and it keeps going back to you and Ty's in the middle of speaking. So that's perfect. Thank you, Jen. And sorry about that, Ty. Go ahead and continue on.
Sure. So I'm just saying that, it really depends, right? Where you are talking about in Palisades, right? So there's plenty of neighborhoods in the Palisades. There's more than 10. I know that, right? You could talk about the Highlands, the Huntington, you could talk about, the Bluffs, you could talk about, and there's multiple bluffs, you could talk about, like I already mentioned, the alphabet street. So I'm not here to give a tutorial on that. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, every neighborhood will be different, and every single property will be different, right? The challenges that arise from that, and things of that nature. I think some of the biggest challenges, obviously, are insurance, right? And how you manage your own expectations with insurance, right? Some folks were severely underinsured. Some folks had proper insurance. Some folks only had, let's say, loss of use for 12 months. If you had that, you're in a completely different situation that somebody had loss of use for 2 years, right? Or 18 months or 24 months. Because if you had loss of use for 12 months, well, that 12 months just expired, right? And so I'll always go back to the word expectations. Each property has its own story, right?
And what was the one thing that surprised you the most, would you say?
The one thing that surprised me the most was, uh, and I shouldn't say it surprised me, I should just say I already kind of knew this, but as you see it and you see the people that are there, and of course the folks that are going in to rebuild, the cool part that I love is that you don't have big giant corporations coming in and trying to buy everything up, right? The thing that surprised me is that there's clearly, pride in the neighborhood. Everybody wants Palisades back, right? You didn't have to grow up in Palisades. You could have been one of the neighbors, knowing that it's a beautiful place. I personally love Palisades. I think it's amazing. And, we want Palisades back. It's just, how long will that take? And you will get various opinions. How can you determine how 6,000, approximately 6,000, a lot of numbers out there, 5,800, 5,900, 61, whatever. Let's just say it's around six. It's a lot of, that's a monumental task to replace that number of homes, especially in that type of environment where most people are going to think of Palisades as you're fairly well off, right? You're more than likely well to do. And so that may not necessarily be the case, because you did have clearly some generational homes there, right? And then you have to figure out what that looks like, because you could have easily a neighbor just buying a neighbor's property or land, right?
Yeah.
or there's a lot of different things going on. But that's probably what surprised me the most is that you could tell there's a real civic pride there, and Palisades will be back. It'll just take some time.
I'm really happy to hear that. That's awesome. And Jen, I can't remember if you told me last week when we spoke that you actually were there as well and you went with him, or were you on the ground as well?
I got a chance to drive through Malibu actually, and it was also very, very devastated. And as we know, Palisades and Malibu, just the landscape of the grounds and the hills and the beaches and the terrain in which you have to build on is so challenging. And so, Ty, I wanted to ask you, as a developer and dealing with your construction company and your contractors on a day-to-day basis, what are the challenges that homeowners are facing when they actually want to rebuild?
Well, it goes back to expectations, right? And, I'll put it like this. There's a lot of numbers being thrown out there. And the one thing we have to remember is Palisades will be different than the folks with the Eaton fire, right? And I'll point in something in this state that happened in the upper north, right? The Camp Fire that happened in Paradise, and that happened in 2018. Okay. So people are throwing out numbers like, oh, well, we can rebuild in 4 or 5 years, or it will take a decade. Nobody really knows. And by personally going to Paradise in late 2024, which is about 13, 14 months ago, October, November timeframe, that fire happened in 2018. 6 years later, okay, I still saw entire neighborhoods, okay, entire blocks not be touched. This is 6 years later. And so it's difficult to predict or do a forecast of when the entire Palisades will be rebuilt, because it's pertinent to your question, meaning that what are some of the challenges? Well, some of the challenges are basic services, right? You want schools, you need all the basics, right? And so some of the challenges will be if you're a developer, which, we know that, these are not necessarily outside foreign developers, these are local developers. And if they're picking up, let's say, half of the properties, they have to walk themselves through, okay, when I finish this house, what can I do with this house? Because going back to the expectation word, if you're a developer, you're not going in there to build and sell a home for $2 million. It's going to be north of 4, 5, it could be, could easily be 8 digits, it could be 10 million or more. But my point is that if it's 6,000 are gone, right? And you're going to have, let's just say that 50% of what's going to be rebuilt, right? Let's just work backwards with the number. If let's say that 30% or around 30 to 33%, okay, now you're talking around anywhere from 14 to 2,000 houses that are going to be handled by folks that'll be owner users and developers. Okay, so you're talking, what is that? 800 houses for developers. Okay, so if you develop a house and now you want to sell it for $5 million, let's say, okay, well, you cannot get rid of 800 houses in 2 or 3 years, right? There's not the demand for that. So that could be an issue moving forward. And as a developer, you have to do that type of math, right? I think, my opinion, again, this is just my opinion, a sweet spot would be for owner users. And I would encourage folks that if you are looking to have a beautiful location, and be in a wonderful place and you want to build a new home, Palisades is probably a great spot for you. But if you're a developer, and I'm not trying to dissuade any developers because, of course, we need developers, right? We need Palisades rebuilt. So they play a critical role. But in terms of what is the demand over $5 million, what is that? 100 houses a year, 150 houses a year. So you just do the math, right? That alone takes 8 years to sell them all. So there's some basic things that have to happen here. And my phone rings at least once or twice a week asking me, what do we, you want to do a deal with me? And it's just, I think you just have to be careful, and you really have to look at every situation. Every piece of property is its own story.
So, Ty, I don't want to get too political. I try to stay away from politics, but I don't know that we can avoid it on this conversation. There was a lot of talk in the media, and I'm from Las Vegas. I'm a realtor in Las Vegas, and there was a lot of promises that were made, and there was a lot of things that were said. That we may forego this certificate. We may forego this. I'm drawing a blank right now, Ty, but you have to get approved.
Talking
You have to
about permits?
permits. Yeah, that's the word. Sorry, I was drawing a blank. And can you speak on that a little bit? Do you feel like that was accurate? Would you say that the temperature there is easier, or have they actually came out with more rules and regulations to rebuild? And can you just touch on that? Because I'm just curious.
Yeah, just again, there's media, there's perception, and there's reality. Um, I can tell you firsthand that getting a permit through Los Angeles before, and I don't care if you were in Westwood, Brentwood, Palisades, Venice, Bel Air, I could just go down the line. You were talking, around 6 months, meaning longer than 6 months. And if you're in Pali or let's say Venice and you had to deal with the Coastal Commission, you're well over a year for sure, right? So now though, I think they've done as good a job as they could possibly do. You can get a permit in, 2 to 3 months now. So that end of the bargain, they have kept that up. The one thing you have to remember though is that if you are an owner user and you're purchasing a property, and you want to make some changes, there may be some difficulties there, and that could extend your time, but that's normal. That you may want to make. Just think of this: if you are your home burned down and your neighbor's home burned down, well, then you're not going to have the exact same footprint that you had before because you're probably thinking, I love the Palisades. I'm not leaving Palisades. I'm just going to build something on 2 lots. Well, then you have to go to the drawing board for that. That's not going to happen in 60 days. But everyone is definitely putting their best foot forward. And LADBS has really stepped up to the plate and really helped out. And so I think they have done a good job.
So expectation wise, you would say that they've exceeded your expectations as far as helping people to get back into their homes.
100% they have. They really have. I mean, it takes an army, right? A community to get this
Yeah.
done. And yeah, they really have.
And Jen, it looks like you have something you want to ask, so go for it, Jen.
Yeah, I wanted to bring something up because I've heard a lot about this specific challenge, and I'm sure you have as well, Ty, when it comes to insurance, homeowners insurance, fire insurance. These are things that, throughout time have been more challenging in places like Malibu, Palisades, Altadena, where you have that brush so close to you. But especially now with some changes that have gone on over the past couple of years, it's even been more difficult. And what does that look like now? And are there specific regulations where if you are going to rebuild, there are things that have to be put in place now that this certain technology exists to prevent fires. So I just wanted to see if you had some insight on that for us.
Well, insurance is, to me, as a developer, it's, of course, there's property taxes and, the construction costs and all that have basically been about the same. So insurance is a big piece of what you have to do, right? Because you have all sorts of carrying costs, but you have to have insurance at home time. And actually, when you're done building, you have to have insurance on your property, unless you paid cash or you self-insure or whatever you do. But at the end of the day, insurance is a critical component. And what the insurance companies will, provide, what type of coverage will they provide for you? And as somebody who had insurance licenses, I know how insurance companies think, right? And so it impacts everything across the board, because with a mortgage, you automatically have to have an insurance policy and coverage for what you owe, right? That's the whole point of insurance. So that impacts, how much you put down, and of course you can get insurance in places in Palisades, but it's the details, right? The devil's in the details of what that insurance looks like, what your premiums are, what your coverage is, and then does that impact the amount of money you have to put down, right? And so all of that, you have to take it into consideration. You have to walk yourself. I mean, you really have to. I know you actually, said the word, David, again. You repeated me a little bit, but expectations. What are your expectations? And how much are you willing to buy insurance for? And for what coverage? And then that could flip. Am I buying a $3 million house or a $5 million house? That all matters. And then it goes back into what's the inventory look at the time. And there will be different stages. I mean, there's been, the statistics have been like really up and down in these 12 months since the fire, right? We're now in month 13, but that tells me that there will be peaks and valleys in 3 or 4 years from now. There might be too many houses finished. There might not be enough houses finished, because everything's predicated on inventory, right? And then you have to, insurance will play a big part. I know I'm rambling a little bit there, Jen, but insurance is critical, and you really, really have to do your homework there.
On a high level, could you just touch really quickly? And I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know that this segment it hit so many nerves that it's going to be a little longer than we normally go. But I'm really curious about the rising costs in construction and how bad is it for these people that want to rebuild?
Well, I mean, like everything else, it will go up over time. I don't believe the cost of construction will have that big of a impact. Again, expectations. I've touched base on the camp fire, right, in Paradise, but let's make one thing really, really clear here: the expectations for a home in Palisades, right? And what you're supposed to supply for a brand new home in Palisades, and what owners want, what buyers want. They're going to spend 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, $10 million on a home. You're talking fairly sophisticated buyers, right? Not fairly, they are. And existing owners, the homeowners there today are very savvy, right? You're talking that obviously there's some very wealthy people there, a lot of wealthy people. So everyone pretty much knows the answers to their own quiz. And so when you talk about construction costs and those costs rising, a bigger story, which we won't touch base today, is a whole nother topic, which would be the ULA mansion tax. And that's, to me, another problem on, why folks would want to not invest, because the tax is so high in comparison to a place like New York, even, which is sad. So I don't believe. I know I said about 3 or 4 things there, and I'm not trying to get away from your question on construction costs, but construction costs are what they are. There's not some shortage of materials and labor. It's just it's homeowners are obviously, they need to know what they can afford, and a lot of that's insurance based on what they're getting. I think that's the bigger issue. The insurance is a much, much bigger issue than construction costs.
And yeah, yeah. And lastly, I want to wrap up this kind of part of this because we could do this podcast for 3 hours, I'm sure. Do you find that developers are actually pulling out?
no, no. I just think that developers, it's the developers who've been developing there for, 10 years, 25 years, whatever number you want to use.
Hmm.
So, like I said, I believe I said earlier, there's not this huge influx of, out of town foreign money per se. Um, the developers that are there are putting their toe in the water, meaning that, doing two or three, something along those lines. And so I don't really believe no one's pulling out. It's just what I said earlier is when you finish your developments, what's the market look like? That's the key. That's the question that developers have to ask themselves. That's an internal question that only they can answer for themselves, right?
I
Because
feel
what do you do with it? Do you lease the house, and what do you do with it? If you can't
right.
sell it, what are you going to do?
I feel like I'm taking up all your time, Jen, and Jen looks like she has so many things she
I'm
wants to
sorry.
say.
I'm sorry. I'll stop talking.
No, 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 no. Because this one is really like this one strikes a lot of nerve with me because I like to hear personal stories. Do you have personal stories of your personal clients and what kind of emotions are these people going through? I mean, is there some specific stories and how are the people that lost their homes, like how are they doing emotionally? How are they doing just as human beings? And are they being taken care of? And can you share a little bit about that?
Well, you have I know, Jen, you have a couple, but to be, not to name names or just be a little generic here, you you have people that are obviously devastated, and that would be, I would say, the bigger number. There are people, though, that privately, for them, this is an opportunity for them to either move on or just start fresh, or in some cases, rebuild a home that was very old, right? And so it's like anything else, when there's this type of trauma, for lack of a better word, you're going to have a lot of the emotions are high. And even a year later, you can tell people are very, very tight. I mean, you're talking about a great, great area, great neighborhood, pride of ownership. People spend a lot of money on their homes there. So the not to the obvious answer is, of course, people are devastated, and they still are. But if you could pick up the pieces, you will. And and then that doesn't just go for the people who spent 2, 3, 5 million, $6 million, $10 million. There are people. Jen, you introduced me to somebody last week that was in a condo situation, right? And so maybe you could speak to that one, but it really, there's a range there, and there's a range of thoughts and yeah, so I've said enough there, Jen. You can take it from there. I feel like I'm
Yeah,
dominating this conversation, and I don't want to do it. Sorry.
it is interesting when you talk to people who have actually experienced it. It's their home. It's their 30 years of their lives and memories that were lost. And you mentioned I spoke with one of my neighbors. Actually, she lives near me now, but she was in a condo building in the Palisades for most of her life. And unfortunately, the entire building was burnt down. And as a community, all of the owners decided they do want to rebuild. And so they're in the next, 2-year process to rebuild that. And I could see a glimmer of hope in her eyes, which was really, really uplifting and just still very emotional. But I'm happy for her. I know a lot of people have made a different decision. And so, Ty, I just have one more question for you. And I've heard you say this many times. Uh, opportunity costs. So when you're talking to homeowners that are now, by timing and nature, have been given this decision of what to do now, the fork in the road, are you finding that people are looking in other areas of California to move to? I know obviously the property value is very high, and also just forever has been very expensive, especially in Southern California. So, we have a lot of viewers here that are looking at, what if I move out of state? What if I go somewhere else and I take whatever, monies, insurance, whatever I can, put together, instead of putting that into California, putting it into another state, and even developers too. Like, what are those conversations you're having when they're deciding between California and moving out of state?
Yeah, I would say the majority that I've talked to are still thinking about being here on the west side. But there's no doubt some of them are ready to go. And a lot of that's lifestyle based, right? You also have to remember the amount of money. So those that want to rebuild and can rebuild will rebuild and stay. Some that are going to move to Malibu or Santa Monica or Brentwood or wherever else they're thinking, Bel Air, Beverly Hills, whatever, or downsizing into a condo. But then you have plenty of people who have some generational wealth, and they can, they're in their mind, and they're right, they can get more for their money in Las Vegas, or they want to move to a state like Florida where they still feel like they can get more for their money. And then there's others who want to just go and live, in Idaho, or they want to go to Utah, or wherever they want to go, because maybe they want to be more outdoors, go skiing, whatever, Colorado. Yeah, I mean, it's all the above. And you're also getting some folks that are just, they want to move down to Orange County, right? They want to move down, maybe Palos Verdes, they're staying in the Santa Monica Bay. Maybe it's just not far enough. They don't, it's running the gamut. There's a lot of ideas out there, but yeah, are people leaving? Of course they are. But, we also have an influx too, right? So it is California. But at the end of the day, it's every situation's different. And, let's just say the number is 6,000 houses in Pali. That's 6,000 stories, and
Wow.
that's what's overwhelming, right? And the best neighbor is a neighbor that is there to listen and a helping hand. And I think that's, in many cases, that's kind of all you can do, because each person has to figure out what's best for them. And a lot of times it's the insurance part that plays a big part.
Ty, I'm really glad you said that, because I haven't shared this, and like I said at the beginning of the show, I haven't met Ty before, and I'm sharing some things about our history and the Leaving California groups and Exit California. There are people in our groups that actually post comments and want questions, and they do it anonymously. They don't want people to know that they're thinking about leaving. They don't want their boss to know that they're thinking about leaving, or they don't want their practice to know that they might be leaving. And I find that very interesting. But the thing that Jen and I like to provide, and what you've done a very good job today of providing, is information. Get the facts. You may move to Florida, and we've seen people move to Florida and hate it. They hate the mosquitoes, they hate the humidity, they hate how hot it is there, and some people actually love it. But you're never going to know unless you start asking questions and you start finding out more about these different options that you have. So we encourage you to check out your options. And by all means, California is a great place. There's a lot of problems in California, but there's problems everywhere. So we don't ever tell someone, oh, well, you can move to Nashville and there's no problems in Nashville. Or move to Florida and they have no problem, zero. That doesn't exist, it doesn't exist. So Jen, do you want
Let me
to
know
add
when you
on to
find that place, David. Let me know.
right? Yeah. Go ahead. You add on to what I'm saying, Jen. You know where I'm going with this.
I just wanted to appreciate everybody who's with us and continues to watch the show with us. The goal here is to continue to provide information and educate, guide, advise as much as we can, provide our personal experiences, and, guests like Ty. And I just want to appreciate you for being here with us, Ty, and all of the insight you provided, and just wishing you the best in California with all of your development and all the homeowners you're working with, always wanting to make sure that people are, having the help that they need. So that's what we're here for. And thank you again, Ty, for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you, David.
Yeah, it's great meeting you. And please, Ty, I would love to have you just go ahead and say how somebody can get in contact with you. I talk a lot about options, and Ty is way more of an expert than I am in the Palisades. By no means, I think I've only been there
I
a
would
couple of times.
funnel everything through Jen. So Jen's
Okay.
part of the team and a
Okay.
big part of what we do at Harcourt's West Side and West Side Property Group. So Jen, take it from there. It's probably better if they call you first anyway, because it's probably better they call you first. My opinion.
Okay, so yeah, so make sure you get a hold of Jen, and we're going to have our contact information. If you want more information about any of this and you're thinking about options, we do have the blueprint. We're not going to get into the blueprint today, but I'm telling you, it'll save you money, it'll save you time, it'll save you a lot of headaches for sure. And again, I'm David Barry. I'm the host of your show, and I just love giving out the information. Jen, do you have anything you want to say in closing?
Thank you, David. I just wanted to, again, shout out to everybody in California. I know you guys have been going through a lot. If it's time to go for you, we are here for you. If you wanna stay, definitely stay. I'm staying. Ty's staying. But if it's time to go, we're here to help, and definitely reach out to get more information on the blueprint from David.
All right, guys. Thanks. Have a great day, and we'll see you again real soon. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.